Hi everyone, my name is Ilyssa and welcome to my channel. I actually haven't been on this channel in quite a while, but I figured that I would record this video because of a lot of the experiences that I've been going through over the past couple weeks, and actually probably over the last 12 years of my life that have just escalated at multiple points in time, but in particular over the past 2 to 3 weeks. And I've been sharing a lot of what I've been going through on my Instagram and other various social media platforms. But I wanted to record this video because I think it's really important for me as someone who's an ESTJ who likes to externalize, but also to share my experiences to destigmatize mental health. Not saying that I, Ilyssa, will destigmatize mental health, but at least if I can share my experience, that other people will feel less alone. You know, you really aren't alone, and that you can identify with maybe some of the things that I've been going through. This video is about my battle with generalized anxiety disorder, and also the ways it manifests through major depressive episodes. I'm 27 years old. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in English literature. I taught at the university for several years at San Jose State University, but over the last year I worked at Apple here in Cupertino. I have a very high set of standards that I place on myself and also on other people. I'm very type A, I'm very high strung. Anxiety is something that has been in my life in a very clear way, at least since I was around 14 or 15 years old. And it's actually been something that has propelled me towards finding success in my life. It allowed me to get through grad school. It allowed me to seek out a career where I've been extremely successful and happy. It's also allowed me to, I guess, build a platform on social media, though it's not nearly as big as some other folks out there. And the drive and the anxiety around wanting to represent various ideals has been something that has propelled me towards building the platform that I have. So anxiety is something that has been good in my life for many reasons. But there are points when anxiety gets to such a high level and such a high degree that it becomes extremely debilitating. I've been in therapy on and off since I was about 15. My parents got divorced when I was 15. My dad came out. I was raised in an extremely religious Christian Pentecostal home, and so I went through a really interesting period in my life where the things that I thought I believed and the things that I was experiencing or trying to parse out weren't always in alignment. And so something that I think if you can understand, and maybe I'll start this by talking about my triggers and my sources of anxiety, are around lack of control and increased ambiguity. So I function properly, or at least I think I function properly, when things are clear cut to me and when there's no ambiguity, when things are clear and when I can see all the various steps that are along the path to get me from one place to another, and when also I have control over those things. That is not how life works. You know, I can't have control over everything, but my anxiety stems from a lack of control over myself and a lack of control over my environment. And therefore, by extension, a lack of control over other people. Leia gets really, really anxious when she hears trucks outside, so pardon the outside noise. Lack of control over myself, lack of control over my environment, lack of control over others. The other places where my anxiety stems from is in wanting to fix things that I see that are going awry, or impatience around other things not being fixed that I think should be fixed. And of course, I think one of the biggest sources of anxiety is around insecurity and imperfection. I have wanted to be perfect my entire life. Perfect grades. I wanted to be and it's interesting, I'm not competitive in like board games or in sports. That's never what it's been. I've enjoyed doing sports. I enjoyed bodybuilding and powerlifting, and you know, I played soccer and I ran track and cross country and all those things. I never wanted to be the best there. That's not what it was. It's that instead, no matter what I was doing, I wanted people to love me for it. Whether I was the best or not, I still wanted people to acknowledge and affirm the things that I was doing and the success that I was having, whether that meant that I was number one or not. Instead, I think my anxiety for myself stems from me having really high standards and expectations and wanting other people to just love me all the time. And no one's ever gonna love everything that you do. They're never gonna agree with everything that you think or the things that you say. And so I know these things rationally. I am a rather self-aware and rational person, but when anxiety gets to its height or at its peak, I spiral into insecurity based out of that imperfection. I'll give you some examples of ways in which this is manifested in the past for me. So several years ago when I started my social media platform, and it's still around and I haven't looked at it in years, but there's this website called Get Off My Internets, and it's essentially just like the cesspool of the internet. It's people that go into these forums and they just shit talk beauty influencers or fitness gurus or whatever. And there was this entire thread dedicated to me and dedicated to all of the issues that people had with me, and people calling me ugly and saying my hair was awful and saying I was hypocritical and that I was just self-absorbed and narcissistic. And someone even wrote like, she loves herself for no reason. And I remember thinking like, good, I do love myself, just to like unabashedly love myself. But you know, at the time, rationally, what I knew was that these people were, you know, jealous or insecure or, you know, just being hateful to be hateful. But internally, right, because I battle with imperfection and insecurity, you know, struggling with imperfection, it really took a toll on me, and it made me, like I think anyone else would be, it made me want to kind of curl up in a ball and not be on social media. And so that was one of the first times over the past couple years that I found myself panicking, and I would feel this wave of anxiety come over me, and I had a hard time, and I kind of removed myself from social media for a little while. Another time when it manifested into a depressive episode for me was a couple years ago. It's about 2 years ago now, almost exactly 2 years ago. I went in to get a pap smear and found out that I had HPV. Many women, I think like 1 in 3 people have HPV now. It's something that men carry, right? So it's likely that my husband carried it, and I had never had, you know, signs of it before with other sexual partners, and it's likely, you know, that Kyle never got tested for it. Men don't get tested for HPV. They get tested for other, you know, sexually transmitted diseases. But HPV, you know, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't have signs. It doesn't show, especially on men. I have no symptoms of it. It's just something that you carry, and it can be precancerous for cervical cancer. And that really did freak me out, and I ended up having to get a colposcopy, which is this procedure where they essentially go into your cervix, and trigger warning for folks that don't want to hear this, right? But it's a very invasive and vulnerable experience where they essentially scrape your cervix. And knowing that I was going to have to go into that procedure was extremely frightening for me, and so it caused me to go into a full-blown depressive episode. I curled up in on myself. I stayed in bed all day, every day. It was extremely scary for me, and I couldn't stop thinking about that procedure. So there have been other moments in my life where I felt heightened anxiety, but those are 2 examples of moments where I didn't panic, where I felt my heart pounding, where I, you know, had shortness of breath, where I became reclusive. But this time around, and let me get to this moment in time, I guess I'll preface it by saying this. Back in August of 2017, right after my wedding, I chose to get a Nexplanon implant. A Nexplanon implant, it's a birth control implant right in your arm. I had been on birth control, I'd been on orthocycline for years and had never had problems with orthocycline, absolutely loved it. The only reason I chose to go on Nexplanon was because I wanted the ease and the convenience of not having to take a pill every day. I just wanted to get an implant. I didn't do enough research, and I didn't learn that Nexplanon for many women causes severe skin issues. And because it has such high adrenal properties and high testosterone, it can cause many women to break out. I have never had acne in my life. I've had, you know, the occasional pimple, but I've really never struggled with acne. I've had pretty clear skin for a lot of my life. And so after a few months of having the Nexplanon implanted, I started to notice that my skin was changing, that it was breaking out, and I started to sort of attribute it just to stress at work. And, you know, Apple's a high stress environment. But then it started to get progressively worse, and I noticed that my skin texture was changing as well. I was getting very oily and then dry patches in other places, and so it kind of freaked me out. So I decided in the new year, at the very end of December and in the beginning of January of 2018, to start a brand new skincare regimen. And I thought that me taking better care of my skin, which is something that I had never been doing before, you know, in fact, I would sleep in my makeup and I, you know, wash my face in the shower, and that was about all I did. I made the decision to start to try some skincare. And I did way too much, way too quickly. I researched everything I could on skincare addiction and on r/Asian Beauty on Reddit. And I just went full throttle and bought all these products, and it was okay at first, but then the moment I started to add in acids, AHAs, alpha hydroxy acids, and BHAs, my skin just started to explode. Here I am, this person who already has, you know, a very type A, high-strung, high-anxiety personality, and now something is happening that I can't control, that I've never experienced before, that I have no solution for, because skincare is such a, you know, your mileage may vary and there is no solution for you. And that just started, you know, me off on a spiral. So I got the Nexplanon implant removed, and I went back to my original birth control. And though my body had been used to it at one point, now I'm adding in a brand new hormone, which again is gonna change the chemistry of my body. And then I went to New York City in the beginning of March, and the temperature changes and the coldness and the dryness just made my skin worse, right? So it just continued to spiral and spiral. And again, for some folks who have struggled with acne, or folks who were like, you know, why it's just acne, it's just pimples, whatever. You know, anxiety and trauma exists on a continuum. It doesn't exist on a spectrum, right? Yes, I understand that there are far worse things for me to have freaked out about, or, you know, I could have freaked out about, but in the moment, that is what was triggering all of this anxiety. What we sort of started to unpack and uncover about my skin was that, again, it was like on the surface imperfections, things that I couldn't control, things that I found as defective, and now the whole world can see it, and they can see all my imperfections and my insecurities. And, you know, eventually, I kind of came to terms with the fact that, okay, I've got to accept it. I've just got to be gentle with it. I have to treat my skin in the same way that I might treat a tattoo, and that I needed to treat my skin as if it were wounded. And that began around the beginning of April. I made the decision around April 6th or so, so that was a Friday, April 6th, to just use gentle products on my skin, which was CeraVe, and then to just wash my face, moisturize it, take gentle care of it. And then I left for Austin, Texas. I left for Austin, Texas on April 9th for work, because Apple is also in Austin. It's actually where my boss is. And that's where all of this began, the actual panic attack. So a brief synopsis was, I headed off to Austin. Here I am, finally accepting my skin and saying, like, okay, I'm gonna make it through, I'm gonna be okay. But of course, I was gonna be alone in this hotel room all week. Stressful to be away from my husband, who was a safe haven for me, and a confidant, and someone who was being encouraging and kind to me throughout the entire time I was struggling with my skin. And the way that panic attacks work, and what I'm learning from this book I'm reading called The End to Panic by Elke, I don't know the full name, I'll link it down below. But one of the things that I'm learning is that actually panic attacks don't happen right at the height of the anxiety. It's actually when it starts to taper back off and you settle back into normalcy, and then the anxiety spikes. And that's exactly what happened to me. And that Monday, I got into Austin, I sat around the hotel room all day, and of course there were all kinds of mirrors in the hotel room. I started noticing my skin, and I just started to pick at it. And get frustrated with it, and I, was embarrassed that I was gonna have to go into work and see all my coworkers and have acne, pocked skin, and again, seeing my skin as me instead of just seeing it as something that was manifesting and not, who I was. And that night, I couldn't fall asleep. I had sat in the hotel room all day, I hadn't exercised, I had just ordered food in, I had been kind of lazy, and my body couldn't fall asleep. And so I made the decision to kind of get up and fixate on my skin, and went into work the next day, that Tuesday morning, which was the 10th, and had a bad day because we had a brand new employee that I was gonna be talking to, and I was exhausted. And so I, tried to make the decision to, try to eat and try to enjoy the day, but I kept fixating on the fact that my skin was looking weird, or that I wasn't able to sleep the previous night, and again, go into the hotel room that Tuesday night and I can't sleep again. And I was supposed to have taught a class the next day, and so now I'm freaking out that I haven't slept 2 days in a row, that my skin looks awful, apparently in my head, and then I'm not gonna be able to teach this class because I'm gonna be too exhausted. And that is when the panic started. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I was sweating, I was clammy, I couldn't see, I felt lightheaded, I felt like I was gonna die, I felt like I was gonna have a heart attack. And I'm sitting in this hotel room, desperately trying to fall asleep, trying everything, trying meditation, trying listening to podcasts, trying to do a little bit of yoga to calm myself down. And I had never had my heart beat out of my chest for like over an hour, and couldn't stop myself, couldn't calm down. And tried to call my husband, and he's like, I don't know what to do to help you. I know I'm not there with you, which just made things worse, right? That I'm alone, that I'm struggling alone. And I keep thinking, how I need to go to the hospital, right? Which is something that happens when you're in the midst of a panic. And I have Kaiser insurance, which is a California-based insurance, and I'm in Texas. How am I gonna do that? I know that I'm speaking quickly, but I'm trying to show you all of the various thoughts that are happening and all the variables. And so anxiety is the worst when you can't compartmentalize it, when you can't acknowledge it, face it, when it's nebulous, when it's spiraling all over and you can't identify kind of where it's coming from, because at that point, it's coming from everywhere, right? All kinds of triggers and pressures, and especially things that make me the worst, which are spiraling out of control, not able to control my environment, imperfection, insecurity, everything's happening all at once. And so I knew I needed to get to the doctor. I knew I needed to get home, and went to the doctor there in Texas and was prescribed Xanax. My blood pressure was 120/90 and my resting heart rate was 105. Extremely tense, and Xanax was extremely necessary to calm me down. Xanax is something that should be taken for emergencies only. It's a highly addictive narcotic. It's a benzo. And so it was recommended to me that I go and return home and go home to my therapist, discuss some long-term treatment, which is Lexapro. But at that point was prescribed Xanax so that I could get on a plane and go home. The Xanax took the edge off for sure. That is like when I made that first post on Instagram and said, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. So many people reached out to me and said, hey, it's gonna get better, hold on. It's gonna suck right now. It feels like it's, never gonna get better right now. And I think those are some of the things that I started thinking, right? And I've written down here some of the thoughts that were going through my head were, obsessive thoughts around it never getting better, not being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. All I could think about was, am I ever gonna be able to sleep again? In addition, it started to develop this agoraphobia where it was like, I can't be alone. I can't be alone because I can't be alone with my own thoughts, because that's scary to me. My body was just hyper emotional, sensitive to everything, every sound, cold, hot, sensitive to the touch. I felt like I was physically ill because I was, right? It was a mental thing that was happening, but it was physically manifesting in some wild ways. So I got home that Wednesday and I did eventually fall asleep. I fell asleep by about 2 in the morning and I slept for about 6 hours. But then, I had this kind of back and forth where every other day for the next week I would sleep and then I would not sleep, and then I would sleep and then I would not sleep. And again, that inconsistency was infuriating. And so by that Friday, I had slept on Wednesday, didn't sleep Thursday, And then that Friday morning, I made the decision, I need to get to my doctor now and I need meds. So I am not trying to be a pill pusher, or I'm not trying to advocate that meds are right for everyone. However, my family genetically has suffered with anxiety, depression, many people. My father, my grandmother, her brothers, my brother, my sister, all of my family really suffers with high-strung anxiety, and many of us, it manifests through depressive episodes. And my dad had used Lexapro for years and it had worked well for him. And my dad's also a pharmaceutical chemist. My mom's an oncology nurse, though she has, you know, lots and lots of experience in all other forms of medicine. And so both of them said, hey, if this is something that's going to help, it's a good idea to try it now. I have been offered Lexapro or some form of SSRI several times throughout the course of my therapy in the past, and I kept pushing it away. I kept saying, no, I'm fine, I don't need meds, I just need therapy, I just need to deal with it on my own, because to admit that you need some form of medicine to help you deal with anxiety is, you know, at least for me, feels like I'm defective. It feels like there's, you know, that would be me admitting that there really is something wrong with me. And now I understand that it's actually just something to help you level out, because anxiety is not something that's wrong with me. It's not something that is defective about me. It's something that I just deal with. I deal with the symptoms of it. And anxiety can be good, right? Anxiety has helped me be the person that I am today, but I just needed some help. And I had kept pushing away help for so many years, and I knew at this point, I need to get on this medicine. I also knew about Lexapro that it takes sometimes a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or even more for it to actually start kicking in, for you to feel the effects of it, for you to actually feel a sense of relief. And then it can take up to 2 months for you to feel the full effects of it. So I knew that if I waited any longer, I was just prolonging some form of help. And for some people, you know, SSRIs don't work. Some people have to experiment with all sorts of SSRIs to find something that does eventually work for them. But I had hope. I had hope that, you know, if my dad had taken it and worked well for him, I'd never taken SSRIs before, if I went immediately on, you know, kind of a higher dose, like 10 milligrams, and I had started it then, that I would eventually find some relief, and I had some hope around that. So let me move on now then to some of the ways that I am coping today through medicine, through therapy, through other forms of self-care. So as I mentioned, I started Lexapro on April 9th. Today is day 14. So we're 2 weeks in now at this point on Lexapro, and I will tell you that with my experience in the first couple days, because that first week I wasn't sleeping well and I also wasn't eating at all, I developed some nausea for those first 2 days or so on Lexapro, and I had anticipated that. So I knew that Lexapro could cause nausea, it could cause headaches, could make you feel like you had flu-like symptoms, and so I prepared and actually got some Pepto-Bismol and prepared for that. And so I was able to lessen those side effects because I was prepared for that. Just to touch on the not eating, that first week, because the anxiety was so high, I wasn't eating, I did lose 10 pounds. I normally sit around 138, 139 pounds, and I was around 128, 129 when I was at home that first week when I got home from Austin. And your body just, immediately goes into shock, and it's rapid that it happened to me, and that was scary. And so once the Lexapro, actually, I had taken it for about 3 or 4 days, I started to notice that in conjunction with me actually force feeding myself, saying, you can't just eat when you feel hungry. You're never gonna eat if you only eat when you feel hungry. You need to just eat to eat. I noticed that the Lexapro started kind of kicking in those first couple days. Maybe it was just a placebo effect, but I did start eating. So some other things in that first week, before Lexapro had actually started to kick in for real, I noticed that things that were helpful were the sun. I started taking vitamin D and a multivitamin, and then just sitting in the sun was really useful for me. Instead of just being stuck in my house, I noticed that being outside, walking, fresh air, those things were extremely useful. I also did take some other kind of I guess, more natural supplements. I tried melatonin to help me sleep. It didn't really work. I tried Calm Mind from Herbalogic. That did help a little bit. I tried, you know, Theanine. I tried Unisom. I tried ZZZquil. I even tried Ambien, and none of those things really helped me sleep. It wasn't until I just let myself naturally sleep without the aid of anything else that I finally started to fall asleep. I think in conjunction with eating and starting to exercise as well. A lot of folks did recommend CBD oil to me, and so I did purchase CBD oil from Cured Nutrition. I didn't like it at all. It actually made me feel more anxious because it made me really sleepy and like slow and sluggish. And for some people who like love THC, love CBD, love just marijuana in general, I think maybe that's something that they love that chills them out. Marijuana in general, like and I've only like, you know, smoked weed or like taken an edible a couple times in my life, but every time it's made me paranoid and it's made me feel awful because I feel like I can't actually move. And so for me, those CBD didn't make me high, it just made me feel really sluggish, and so it was not for me. Not a fan at all of it. And so I think CBD is maybe really useful for other folks, but it wasn't good for me. Things that are really useful for me are actually me moving and going and being productive. Something that I've learned from this book that I'm reading, The End to Panic, is that you need to take anxiety and move it into action, and then the action will absorb the anxiety. So for me, who is someone who is used to moving all the time, that meant exercise. And the only way that I was able to exercise is if I was able to eat and sleep to have the energy to exercise. So eating and sleeping started first. That was the base level, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then I was able to exercise and move and get my body tired, and then that released endorphins, and that really started to help. Other things that were difficult in the first week around self-care were, you know, again, that agoraphobia and that fear of being alone. I was, you know, in desperate need to have friends around me all the time. I wanted to call people. I wanted to talk to my dad and my mom, my brother and my friends. And that was really useful at first. But now I recognize that completely depending upon other people to fill that hole instead of just facing your fears and facing your anxiety in the face and saying, okay, do your worst, that can be, you know, it can impede, I think, your own progress. And so there has to be a fine balance between you drawing upon other people and drawing upon their energy and actually facing things on your own and being conscious and being mindful and being aware of what you're feeling so that you can start to deal with it on your own as well, because no one is ever going to be with you 100% of the time, 24/7. You need to start to deal with it on your own. And so I need to find the balance there. Some other things that have been really useful for me though were distractions. So makeup tutorials like the Taylor, she's amazing. I'll link her down below. I don't know why, but I just became addicted to her, to her makeup tutorials. She's so soothing and so interesting to watch. So that was really, really, really awesome. Watching things like Scrubs or even like The Office, things that are like easy watching, The Good Place, those were really useful for me. Spending time with Kyle, just, you know, either watching a movie or going grocery shopping, getting up and moving with him and allowing our conversation to distract me from the anxious thoughts and feelings I had was really useful. And then also, you know, reminders to get out of my head. So I was wearing this wristband that says, you know, progress, not perfection, that my friend Kendi Wendy sent to me. And that was a good reminder that when I felt like I was withdrawing and like I was in my own head, I would look down at it and remind myself, you don't have to be in your head right now. You're allowed to be present. You're allowed to be, you know, in the moment. Even if you feel anxious, simultaneously, you're allowed to be here in this moment. You're allowed to enjoy this moment. And again, it's like that black or white thinking where anxiety comes in and tells you that you're only allowed to be happy, you're only allowed to enjoy things if you don't feel these feelings. It consumes you, and I had to make that conscious choice of intention day after day over the past several weeks to choose to be in the moment. And it was hard, right? But again, it becomes a habit, it becomes practiced, and it was about intention. It was about choice. And I think having that in my mind where it's like, wow, I can control this. I can't control anxiety, but I can control what I choose to do in the face of it. I can control my behaviors, right? So I think that is to say then things that didn't help were not facing my fear. And, you know, because I wasn't sleeping that first week, and I was sleeping back and forth, I started to avoid my bed. I started to become afraid of my bed. And man, anxiety learns so quickly. I would get into bed and my heart would pound because I'd be so afraid of not being able to fall asleep that I couldn't fall asleep. And I'd be afraid of my bed, and so I would start to sleep on the couch. And that just made things worse because I wasn't facing the fear. So my brother and I had a conversation about a week and a half ago where he said, Ilyssa, you've got to lean into it. When you feel it, you need to say, do your worst. You know, when that feeling comes over you, the heart pounding, the coldness, the sweats, just the fear, right? It's that fight or flight. He's like, lean into it and be with it and sit with it and say, okay, you're here. Because it's a valid feeling, whether I think it's rational or not. Other things that didn't help actually, which interestingly were sleep meditations. Trying to, you know, I use this app called 10% Happier, listening to the sleep meditations where it helps you try to fall asleep, or listening to podcasts to help you fall asleep. Those just made me more aware of my sleeplessness. And because it asks you to scan your body and be aware of your body, it just made me feel like my body would start to fall asleep and my mind would just keep going. So for me, I needed something that was mindless, that had nothing to do with sleep. I needed to stop thinking about sleep. And so I would just listen to normal podcasts and like Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness, or listening to 99% Invisible, or with Roman Mars, who's amazing, or even listening to like The Daily, all those podcasts where it intrigued me, but then I could fall asleep with it. Actually listening to mindfulness podcasts about sleep, or mindfulness meditations about sleep, made me more aware of sleep. So I needed to let go of that. So other things that I think were hard, but that were really necessary, were, again, forcing myself to eat, forcing myself to get up and exercise. It's about courage, sometimes doing the things that you don't want to do because you know that you need to do them in order for you to get better. It was really hard, again, in over like the last week or so, to actually feel through feelings and let my heart pound, or let myself feel the anxiety. But once I started just feeling through it, then it wasn't scary anymore because I knew what to expect. I needed to allow myself to find that normalcy again. And then in addition, right, feeling anxiety, but still choosing to be happy. So saying, okay, I've got some anxious thoughts right now, but I'm allowed to be present. I'm allowed to be here in this moment. I'm allowed to post on Instagram. I'm allowed to share my experiences, even if I don't feel 100% better right now. And then of course, starting the meds and having that impatience for it to kick in. I will tell you that for me, the Lexapro, I started feeling, I think maybe the placebo effect in those first couple days, but right around like day 11, that's when so about like 3 days ago, that's when I knew, oh, it's here. Like something happens and it's so gradual and it doesn't change your personality. That's not what it is. But it was this like calm that just came over me, and I knew it because I woke up in the morning and I didn't nearly have as much anxiety as I would have those previous 10 days. I still felt a little anxious, but it was manageable. Like I was like, okay, but I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna enjoy my day. That's when I really knew. And now that I'm 14 days in, so it starts to build up this consistency in your bloodstream, it's only gonna get better from here. I've made the decision to go back to work tomorrow. It's a Friday tomorrow, and so that'll be sort of my first kind of entrance into it, and then I'll take the weekend, and then I'm gonna go to work next week. I, had taken disability at first, and then my psychologist had said to me, hey, like, you need to get back to something that's normal for you. You need to get up and be responsible and be an adult and go back to work. Because for me, again, I need to take the anxiety and channel it into some form of action. And I want to be productive. Work makes me happy. I love what I do. I love my job. So I can't deprive myself of that happiness just because I don't think I'm maybe quite ready. I'm never going to be ready, right? Anxiety is something that I'm going to live with for always. but I'm not in the depressive episode anymore. I'm sleeping, I'm eating, I'm exercising, I'm enjoying my life again. And so it was time to get up and go. And when she had suggested that to me in the first place, and this was just a couple days ago, I was like, oh, I don't know, like that might be hard. And she's like, it's gonna be hard. Deal with it. What happens if you have a panic attack again a month from now? Are you gonna take another month off of work? She's like, no, you're not gonna do that. You need to get up and go, and you need to go to work. And so that was a really swift kick in the butt, and that's the decision that I've made. And I'm not saying that's right for everyone, but that was what's right for me, because I need to get back into a routine. Human beings thrive on routine, especially human beings with high anxiety. And so I need to channel that energy. And that is, you know, self-care for me, is to try to get back into my routine, try to get back into normalcy. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was something that was highly requested, which is how to aid or assist a loved one who's going through anxiety and depression. My husband has been unbelievably, like incredibly supportive, and I knew that he would be, but I didn't realize to the extent of the depth of his love for me. And man, oh man, like I guess I'll just jump into some of the things. I mean, just acknowledging what I'm going through and validating everything that I was going through, and going out of his way to be with me. When I needed him in that first week, he never left my side, not for more than an hour. He took me with him to work. Every time that he trained a client, I was there if I needed to be around him. He stayed up late with me when I couldn't fall asleep. You know, he'd stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd wake up with me when I was still awake. He moved everything around in his schedule to accommodate me. Physical touch as well. He held my hand every moment he got. He rubbed my back. He rubbed, you know, my hair or my head every time that he got. And also, you know, and if this is something that's okay with your partner, is physical touch. Sometimes people need to have sex, right? Like you can't just go away from that if that's something that you enjoy. And so we did have sex, and I know that was helpful for me in that time. Showering together, like these are all things that, so I could feel that physical intimacy, so that I could feel like I wasn't withdrawing from my relationship. He went on and had, you know, it was hyper sensitive to my feelings, but he acted normal and still made me feel like I was his wife, not like I was some girl or some patient that he had to like care for. I still felt like an individual person. So that was really, really useful for me. And also, you know, consistently asking what I need in terms of food and what I need in terms of exercise, being there to listen to me. And also, you know, acknowledging that even if I feel good right now, it doesn't mean I'm gonna feel great in a couple hours. We had to take it hour by hour at first, and now we take it day by day. Even this morning, even though I'm doing great, and it's very apparent that I'm doing great, he asked me today, he's like, hey, do you wanna come to work today? Like, is it okay that I go at this time? And he just wants to be conscious. You know, he's not like looking at me like, oh yeah, she's great, now I can just go. Like, he's very, very conscious of still like transitioning and helping me through. And so that's been really, really, really awesome. So steps moving forward, right? I'm gonna continue taking Lexapro probably chronically for a while, and until I really develop skills, right? We're only 2 weeks into Lexapro, but we're years into therapy at this point. But now I think that we have to shift the understanding of therapy towards not seeing anxiety as something that's defective again, but something that is useful for me. And so choices then are around group therapy. I'll be attending group therapy around generalized anxiety disorder on Thursday nights. I'm also speaking to a telehealth provider. She's a licensed therapist through betterhelp.com. If you're interested in telehealth and you know it's expensive for you to go and see a normal psychologist, or your insurance doesn't cover it, betterhelp.com is $65 a week, which is really, really reasonable. And so because I'm only going to be seeing my psychologist every few months at this point through Kaiser, I chose to have, you know, at least for the next month, someone that I can speak to. I actually just spoke to her this morning, and she's fabulous. And then in addition, right, like enjoying my life, getting out and going, and trying to face my fear by doing things that cause me to be adaptable and flexible. I think that at work, I'm much better at being adaptable and flexible and anticipating that there will be changes and that there will be fires to fight, because that's just the nature of my job. But in my personal life, I struggle a lot more with adaptability and flexibility and having a lack of control, because I think that I control my personal space at all points. So I need to take some of the skills I think that I've learned at work and apply them into my personal life. But again, I hope this video is useful for some folks. I hope that you identified with one or many parts of what I've shared. If you comment below and your thoughts, I'd love that. Thank you for supporting me. So many of you have reached out with like love and kindness, and just I am full of gratitude, truly, 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 for like just this outpouring of support. And you know, I really, really, really don't want mental health to be stigmatized. So many of us struggle with this, and it does feel so isolating. That's what anxiety does to you. It makes you feel like you are alone, and that you are never gonna get better, and that you are not worthwhile, and that you can't ask for help, or that you're a burden, and you're not. You are not a burden. So many people love you and are here to support you, and I've learned that over the course of the last few weeks, and I cannot tell you how excited I am for recovery. And you know, like again, 2 weeks ago, I never thought I was gonna get better. And it just, things have changed, right? Through therapy and through meds and through talking it out and through being honest with myself and through facing my fears and saying, do your worst anxiety, do your worst depression, and I'm gonna thrive. I'm gonna beat this, and it'll never fully go away, but I know that I will learn even better skills over the years to learn to cope with this. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you have an amazing day. And if you are struggling, again, please comment below and know that other people will be here to read that. I'll be here to read that and to support you, okay? Talk to you guys soon. Bye.